Check Podcasts.
Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. Welcome to Chamber Chats. I am the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. This program is happening, as always, in the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking Coast Salish nations, the Songhees and the Esquimalt. Our privilege and honor to live and work alongside them every day. These Chamber Chats are made possible by the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union. And sooner than later, we will be back recording these in the podcasting studios at Czech Television. But in the meantime, we're still living under a few restrictions. You know, during the entire pandemic, all of us had the advantage of going onto the trails and the parks that run throughout our region. We had fresh water. We had sewage continuing. All of those things were almost taken for granted. But that's because of the work that's done by the CRD, the Capital Regional District, makes all of that stuff and so many other things happen. We want to get a catch up on all of that with the CEO of the CRD. Bob Lapham is our guest on Chamber Chats today. Bob, how are you?
Good morning, Bruce. Happy to join you here today.
Thank you for being here. So yeah, I mean, Amanda and I live right near trails and parks, as so many of us do. And since the pandemic happened, we had to get outside more just to sort of clear our mental health and that sort of thing. But the CRD plays a huge role in making those parks and bike trails and hiking trails available to us. So tell me a little bit about that.
That's correct. We have a large regional park system, 13,000 hectares of land, 32 regional parks. And we saw activity in the parks increase dramatically at the start of the pandemic, and really up about 25% over that period of a couple of years, and to the point that we've now had to add resources and work hard to ensure that people enjoy that experience. And we've done surveys in the parks, and we have a very high rate of satisfaction. Majority of people, 80% or more, find a high level of satisfaction when they visit the park system and get a lot out of it in this region.
And I have to think that a lot of people sort of came to know and rely on those parks and those trails throughout the pandemic because, as I said, we need to get out and do something. And the fact that you've had those trails there, how did they come to be? Like, without that being an oversimplified question, how did all these parks happen in the first place?
Well, when regional districts were formed, one of the services that was mandated was the park systems at the time of our incorporation back in 1966. So starting off with essentially a conservation objective and providing opportunities for the public to enjoy the outdoors in a growing urban area was part of it. We've had a land acquisition fund, so we've assembled a lot more parkland over the years, added to that 13,000 hectares today. And as part of the operating program, we've developed trails. We work with local volunteer groups, the trusts, and land conservancy agencies to find really spectacular pieces of property around the region. And that was one of the early things in the pandemic. The province had taken a step to close provincial parks, if you recall. And meeting with my colleagues around the region and municipal level, we agreed that it was essential to keep the regional park system open for the health and well-being of people. And knowing the popularity and critical need of our region, we made that decision locally to continue to operate fully, as with most of our services.
Yeah, I mean, when this all began, when the pandemic was declared, you had to do some scrambling, right? I mean, some really hard decisions and thorough thought had to go into this. So what sort of things did you have to manage around the time of the outbreak?
Yeah, for the CRD, we are an essential service provider, so we provide drinking water to the region. We provide drinking water through a lot of the local services in the Gulf Islands. We deal with solid waste at the landfill. We've wastewater treatment that we have to operate. So we're used to operating as an essential services operation. And so the first impact was to come up with a health and safety plan, as all employers had to ensure the health and well-being of our employees and make sure we're able to deal with circumstances that impacted them. And then quite quickly, we felt that given our business continuity, we could continue to operate. And we have operated pretty much fully right through the pandemic, with the exception of some closures in our recreation centers, which were directed by the provincial health officer. But otherwise, the full operation has been ongoing through the whole pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, we, as I intimated at the beginning, we came to almost take these things for granted in the past, but now they were there for us to use throughout the pandemic. And your staff was very responsive. I mean, they must understand and they know that we rely on them, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it really starts with a highly engaged staff, and CRD employees really understand our mandate. They really understand the importance of the services we deliver, and they're highly engaged. So they take a lot of pride in the services they deliver. They knew that we were communicating with the board and with the public around being there for the community and ensuring that, again, those critical services were available and to make people's lives easier through the pandemic. So and then we reported regularly to our board. So our board had a lot of confidence. I was able to report to them quarterly on the status of our operations and regularly with any adaptation operations we had to make due to the pandemic. So we feel really happy to be able to have operated in that way. And really, you've seen growth in construction in our region really accelerate during that period. It's been really a growth story through the pandemic. With a provincial decision to keep construction and capital operations going.
Yeah, we're going to touch on a number of things that you mentioned there too as we go forward. But one of the things that, pandemic or not, that we always take for granted is fresh water. We're the envy of the world in many ways about that. There's huge areas on this planet that don't have access to fresh water the way that we do. And we do that all the time, just like I'm here with my cup of water right now. We turn on the tap, we take a shower, we take a bath, we water the lawn, wash the car. All that stuff is reliant upon the water system that we have, and CRD makes that happen, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it started off as a Greater Victoria drinking water supply system very early on, more than 100 years ago, and our board had the foresight, as did that water supply agency, to acquire our watershed. So we own 20,500 hectares of land, pretty much the entire catchment of the Souk river area, as well as the leach system now, which is our backup system, where we're retaining that watershed area for future drinking water purposes. So it really starts with ensuring that the catchment area is protected. We restrict access to that catchment area, so there isn't public access. There was one thing in the pandemic with people hiking around the region and getting way out in the backcountry. We had more people venturing over towards the water supply area and back into the backcountry, and we actually had to do more patrols and enforcement there to ensure people were aware that that was a water supply catchment area. And then we have major operations up there that do treatment, disinfection, and then supply all the municipal systems as well as our own. We operate the Wandafuka system that supplies the West Shore directly with drinking water.
And of course, as you mentioned, we are a growing region. We have lots of construction going on. That was declared an essential service, as is all of the stuff with the CRD. But I want to talk about the impact of population growth on what you do. We'll do that next on Chamber Chats. Our guest today on the Chamber Chat is Bob Lapham, who is the CEO of the Capital Regional District. So, Bob, we're talking about the catchment area and the provision of fresh water for this area. We are growing. Our population is jumping and booming. You referenced direct service to the West Shore for example, where a lot of that growth is happening. How does our water system adapt to grow along with the population?
There was a decision by the board to raise the dam a number of years ago. There was a period where we were seeing increased algae outbreaks, and concerns were expressed around the future water quality at that time. And the decision was made to raise the dam. And so we have a complex system, as I mentioned earlier, owning the watershed, controlling the reservoir. There's a series of dams that provide flow to that system. And so we have treatment facilities and then pipe that water down into the main network, and provides people with fresh drinking water. In terms of growth, we're up to a population of 432,000 people now in 2021. So we've seen about 18% growth since 2011. And that growth rate has been able to be accommodated both with that decision to expand the reservoir, as well as our recent completion of the wastewater treatment project for the core area of Greater Victoria as well.
Yeah, when you talk about wastewater, I mean, we all use the water. And then the next step is to return the water, but it has to be processed. It has to be purified. It has to be, I was going to say recycled. It's not recycled, but the sewage treatment plant that happens, that was completed during COVID too. But let's talk about that. Once we use the water, where does it go and how do we get it back?
Right. So we actually, our department that deals with water and wastewater is called Integrated Water Services. So we really recognize the full water cycle and the need to conserve water is part of our demand management philosophy to make sure that people understand the water usage and started really with our metering program in Victoria. We had a really rigorous demand management program. If you think back a number of years, if you've been in Victoria for a long time, we had rebates on toilets and other fixtures for household appliances. That's now been superseded by the building code, and if you go to a hardware store, most of the toilets you see or other fixtures are water-saving fixtures. But back when we started our programs, 15 years ago or so, we had a program to help educate the population about water conservation, our limited water supply. We don't have glaciers or snowpack to deal with. Snowpack a little bit because if we have a good snowpack, it melts and replenishes that water supply area. But that was a big part of our program to get that conservation in. And now we don't really have to spend a lot of effort at that. People in Greater Victoria, they talk about their lawns as the brown is the new green, and they really conserve water in the summer to make sure that our water supply will last us into the future. And then in terms of looking at that water usage, a lot of municipalities have correlated their rates and charges in terms of sewage usage. So a lot of places track meter sewage usage in homes or water usage in homes, and then are able to price accordingly. And so the overall program is meant to ensure our water supply will last as well into the future.
Yeah. So something else, of course, is that we use lots of stuff, whether it's food or we create waste. We compost, we create garbage. All of that stuff is, again, the CRD making that happen, especially when things go to the landfill site. So I've been to the Heartland Landfill site many times. I have to think a lot of people haven't, and they don't understand that whole process. But we are, in a sense, still kind of a disposable culture. We use things and then we throw them away. And it's the CRD that then manages that waste. So tell me about that process through Heartland.
Yes, we operate the Heartland Landfill, and we've also launched the Blue Box program, so recycling programs. Now we're supported by the province in responsible producer regulations. So we're funded on the recycling program from a producer fund. But we do operate the Heartland Landfill. We do have a waste management plan, which looks at setting a target to waste reduction. We do that through the implementation of bans at the landfill. So if you've been up to the landfill, and a lot of people enjoy going there, it's for a lot of people it's an adventure to go up there and to see what's going on. But you do have your refuse, and so there are some things that are banned. Organics collection now is considered pretty mainstream in Greater Victoria, and it wasn't that long ago that we didn't collect organics and we didn't divert organics from the waste stream. And so that reduction in organics finding its way to landfill again extended the life of the landfill. We also looking at banning various metals or drywall or construction debris. Whatever can be effectively recycled or recovered or used in some other way, when that's feasible, we look at banning that from the landfill. And we've got a good relationship with collection agencies, those that collect garbage within the region, those that are involved commercially. We liaise with them regularly to ensure we understand the market and some of the challenges. And that was another thing that popped up in COVID was supply chain issues also impacted the way we could take certain products for recycling. The big floods in the Fraser Valley actually suspended the ability to take glass and recycle that. And then other markets in China were disrupted, and we've had various materials that were recycled in that country. We've had to look at different markets to do that. So it's been a really challenging time to find a way to make beneficially use the waste we ban from the landfill.
Yeah, we're talking today about, well, that's a matter of recycling. I want to still talk about recycling, but also cycling, which we'll do next. We're chatting today on Chamber Chats with Bob Lapham, who is the CEO of the Capital Regional District, the CRD, who operates the Heartland Landfill. So when we talk about those recycled materials, Bob, that show up at Heartland, where do they go from there? You mentioned the glass thing, for example.
Yeah, we have a number of contracts with different companies directly that collect them and then ship them. So we look at producer contracts. We look at numerous firms that are able to take those products and then source them to reputable companies. And then we look at what markets there might be evolving in the future. So one area we're looking into now is waste energy. So part of the liquid waste management process in terms of dealing with our wastewater is produced biosolids, which are a dried byproduct of the waste treatment process. So there's various thermal technologies out there, gasification being one, where we might be able to beneficially use those biosolids. Some countries or places use garbage as a fuel, so they'll process that or strip out various materials and then treat that and use it as a fuel for energy production. So that's sort of the future is waste to energy and what we can do with waste to, again, reduce the impact in the landfill. And before I go on, you've been calling me the CEO of the Capital Regional District. I'm actually the CAO.
I'm sorry.
Local government context is Chief Administrative Officer. And so it's a bit of a nuance, but I am the head of the organization, and people refer to me either way.
Okay, apologies. I'm CEO, you're CAO, so got that all figured out. So, and the energy thing, that's with Fortis, right? Is that who you work with on that?
Well, that's another initiative we have. So we're looking at taking we collect gas from the landfill. So we have a system of pipes, collect all that gas, and right now, for many years, we've been taking that gas and converting it to electricity. So we have a plant at the landfill where we take the landfill gas and then produce electricity with that. Now we're looking at converting that to green gas. So we've recently reached an agreement with Fortis through the BC Utilities Commission to install a plant that will scrub the methane gas and allow it to be utilized through the Fortis pipeline system and then offset our fossil fuel-based gas within the region. So it's an exciting project. It takes a byproduct of the landfill, and as the waste emits gases at the landfill, that can be very harmful to the atmosphere. So we have a program where we cap the landfill, we monitor the gas that's collected, and we've done really well with reducing any kind of emissions from the landfill surface. But then we have an extensive pipe system, collect that, and then now it's going to be processed into green gas, which is an offset in terms of fossil fuel use. And Fortis has really set very high targets to introduce that into their natural gas system to offset their fossil fuel use as well.
So as I said, we're going to go from recycling to cycling. I'm a cyclist. I have a bike. I ride CRD Trails all the time. I think they're amazing. Tell me about that network.
Yeah, so part of our park system when it started off was to include 3 regional trails. So many people around the world are familiar with, because of the names, the Galloping Goose and Enan Rail Trail and the Lochside Trail, which are highly used regional trails. So those trail systems have evolved from really a recreational trail system that ties into the municipal systems to now serving both recreational and commuter needs. So people are using it for walking, leisure, biking, and now even commuting. And one of our priorities at the CRD board level is to increase transportation options and improve transportation around the region. And active transportation is one of the least costly ways to get people around the region. Transit requires quite a significant subsidy. We're building trails, but people can get a bike or get on foot and get to work or get around the region in an active way, which improves their health, but also lessens their dependence on automobiles or other means of getting around. So it's been a successful system. It's expanding. We're doing the last sort of urban leg of the ENN Trail. Coming in, we completed the trail from Langford through to View Royal last year, and now we're completing the leg from Squamill Road into downtown Victoria, working with the City of Victoria there. So the trail will run all the way out to the center of Langford, and now ultimately connect up with the Great Trail, which is the federal trail network across Canada that runs up island.
Yeah, I've ridden all of those. You know what I learned though, that when you ride those trails, you see the region from a whole different perspective. The first time I rode the trail through the Blenkinsop Valley, I saw stuff there I didn't know existed. It's just a whole other perspective on the region, and it's amazing. If you don't have a bike, you should go walk parts of those trails anyway. Just to wrap it up, though, Bob, something else that people may not realize is the role you play on the Gulf Islands is maybe a little bit different than what you play in the other municipalities. For example, building permits and things like that go through the CRD.
That's right. So we, as part of the Capital Regional District, we have 3 electoral areas, which are the unincorporated parts of the region. It's the Juan de Fuca electoral area, Salt Spring Island, and then Southern Gulf Islands. And Salt Spring Island's a community of 10,500 people. So it's a significant, larger than more than half the municipalities in the province, and that's an unincorporated area. So we operate water systems, wastewater collection systems. We oversee 18 different fire departments in the region, and we're involved, as you mentioned, in building inspection for those 3 electoral areas. We really serve as the local government for the 3 electoral areas and provide those services that they need in a rural context. And so we've had a very active building year. You may have heard around the region, there was $2 billion in building permits issued across the region this year, which is a record, significantly higher than past years. Represents a significant number of new units, about 4,500 new units of housing in the region. So it's been a big program for us. Very unique homes, of course, in the rural areas and Gulf Islands. We have people that have individual islands or people that live in more remote areas. And we have to look at rainwater catchment or unique ways of kind of living off grid in some cases.
There's a lot of stuff we've talked about, and there's a lot that we haven't, Bob, but we're out of time for this, so maybe we can catch up on some other things like the role that you do play with housing and libraries, invasive species, First Nations relationships, all that sort of thing. But we'll have to do that before you retire, which is coming up sooner than later. But we very much appreciate your time today. Bob Lapham is the CAO of the Capital Regional District. Bob, thanks for being with us.
Thanks very much, Bruce, and good to have the opportunity to talk.
You bet. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.